A woman chose to hang herself in the forest. Her newborn child, holding a cursed sword named Shiryu, was adopted by a swordsmith and named Guy. Over a decade later, Guy became the only person in the village capable of suppressing Shiryu. No one else could even touch or safely look at Shiryu. During a ceremony to contain Shiryu, an incident occurred. Jealous of Guy, his senior disciple refused to accept that Guy was the chosen one. In a moment of malice, he removed his scarf, causing Shiryu to sense his evil intent and control a young girl to try and kill him. Guy pushed his senior disciple away, but lost his right arm in the process. Despite receiving treatment, Guy continued to feel pain. His adoptive father, Amon, believed Guy felt phantom limb pain, which would last a lifetime. After Amon left, a girl held Guy and offered support, but he pushed her away and vented his anger at his mother's grave. Amon was shocked, but deep down, Guy felt his mother's abandonment led to his misfortune. Out of necessity, and recalling that Guy had gripped Shiryu as an infant, Amon decided to melt down Shiryu to forge a prosthetic limb for Guy, unknowingly fulfilling Shiryu's purpose. Elsewhere, the azoth sword, a cursed sword, was up for auction. A wealthy heir bid $500,000 for this legendary sword. Just as he thought he had secured it, an organization named Shosid took interest in it. After intense bidding, a man won the sword for $1.5 million. The wealthy heir, not ready to give up, intercepted him. He politely offered a large sum to buy the sword, but the man refused. A confrontation seemed inevitable. Using his agility, the man quickly knocked down a bodyguard. As he prepared to leave, a white-haired man appeared. This was Miora, the former commander of the organization and holder of the Joltgewin sword. Facing such a powerful individual, the headquarters issued a retreat order. However, Mickey, also a cursed sword holder, refused to follow the organization's plans. There are 27 cursed swords in the world, each possessing its own consciousness and soul. When held by those with evil intentions, they transform into terrifying Boma. At this moment, a battle has erupted between two cursed sword holders. Facing the enemy's formidable power, Mickey wanted to transform into a Boma and fight with all his might, but the commander issued a strict retreat order. Mickey used his sword to unleash a lightning strike and then escaped. However, the legendary azoth sword was stolen by a wealthy heir named Marcus Shin. The next day, awakened by the call of the cursed sword, Marcus thought about the previous night's battle between the two sword holders, becoming obsessed with their power. Intent on his plan for revenge, Marcus decided to harness this power. Though seemingly in possession of vast wealth, Marcus is a tragic figure. 2 years ago, he lost his family in a car accident and was left paralyzed from the waist down. Disgusted with the fake family money brought him, Marcus turned to a spellbook, attempting to summon the evil spirit within the azoth sword, but received no response. Meanwhile, Marcus's ex-girlfriend unexpectedly visited to announce her upcoming marriage, shockingly to Marcus's best friend. Reflecting on past promises, his family's death, and the betrayal of his lover and friend, Marcus was filled with hatred. It was this flame of hatred that the azoth sword sensed, recognizing and accepting Marcus as its new wielder, deciding to bestow all its power upon him. At his ex-girlfriend and best friend's wedding, Marcus unexpectedly arrived. Despite being paralyzed, he suddenly stood up, driven by the evil aura of the cursed sword. Marcus charged towards the two, determined to slay the betrayers before him. Fortunately, Mickey arrived just in time to defuse the situation. However, the azoth sword unleashed a terrifying black aura, trapping Mickey within it, while Marcus pursued the fleeing couple. Seeing this, Mickey used the Falgon sword's lightning strike to repel the black aura. Meanwhile, as Marcus was about to strike down his ex-girlfriend, memories of happier times surfaced, allowing him to break free from the sword's control. Next, Mickey, an important member of the Shosid organization, plans to take Marcus to their base, as it is the ultimate destination for Boma. Elsewhere, Guy, who had lost an arm, woke up, his right arm now replaced by a prosthetic made from the demonic sword Shiryu, merging him with it. After several days, Guy, fused with Shiryu, fully recovered. However, he was haunted by his mother's abandonment and felt it better to die than live in such loneliness. That day, his fellow disciple Tatsumi, deeply infatuated with the young girl Sayaka, could not hold back anymore. Overwhelmed by his feelings, he forcefully embraced her, determined to take her first experience in the forest, even risking his life for it. However, Guy intervened in time, stopping everything. Enraged, Tatsumi attacked Guy, but was no match for him. Suddenly, Shiryu summoned Guy to kill Tatsumi, but Sayaka woke him from the sword's control. Back in the village, Shiryu's murderous urges continued, causing Guy severe headaches. Luckily, Sayaka's embrace from behind silenced Shiryu's voice. That evening, a woman appeared at Amon's bladesmith shop, delivering a spear called Tonbokiri, so sharp that it split a resting dragonfly in two on its blade, a scene Tatsumi, filled with hatred, witnessed. Later that night, he stole the spear. Over the long years, weapons soaked in human blood eventually gained their own lives. Human negative emotions significantly enhance this life force. Once awakened, these weapons inhabit those with a desire to kill. If the urge to kill completely consumes a person, they become a busoma. Now merged with a weapon, Tatsumi is fully controlled by the desire to kill. Facing such a formidable person, Shiryu inside Guy also stirs. The incessant voices of slaughter echo in Guy's mind, signaling that his transformation is imminent. Now under Shiryu's control, Guy enters his rampage. Facing Tatsumi, who also wields a legendary weapon, Guy easily controls the situation. Exploiting Tatsumi's brief imbalance during an attack, Guy stabs him, causing Tatsumi to flee frantically. After a fierce chase into the night, Guy corners Tatsumi in the bustling city center. However, relying on the slaughter of innocents, Tatsumi's demonic sword transforms again, turning him into a busoma. Guy dodges the ambush and, with agile moves, stabs Tatsumi again. Meanwhile, Shoshidi Organization's patrol soldiers spot their fight and fire intensely from a helicopter. Seizing the opportunity, Tatsumi kicks Guy away and, despite his injuries, forcibly escapes. Next, Guy, still without self-awareness, unleashes a sword energy that destroys the armed helicopter. Finally regaining his sanity, Guy, exhausted in body and mind, returns home. Meanwhile, Marcus, wielding the Azoth sword, has arrived at Shoshidi Organization's third headquarters and met with senior officials. Shoshidi has been working on methods to bond legendary weapons with humans, as successful research could potentially revert Busoma back to normal people. In another sense, humans who possess and can control these demonic swords are called sword dolls, who might become humanity's best weapon against Busoma. Marcus learned from Mickey that to become a sword doll, one must first enter a dormant state. One of Shoshidi's tasks is to induce this dormancy, similar to how a caterpillar becomes a butterfly. Otherwise, they will eventually turn into Busoma. The method of inducing dormancy is quite drastic, cryopreserving the sword dolls before they lose their sanity, to be revived when needed. After Mickey and Marcus were cryogenically frozen, and considering a Busoma had appeared in the city center, the commander revived a sword doll named Seya, a blonde male second lead with a legendary weapon inside him, a magical tool called a chakram. Now, to capture Tatsumi, who is transformed into a Busoma, Seya has been officially deployed. Meanwhile, Tatsumi, who had previously escaped, aims to consume fresh blood to hasten his recovery, once again targeting innocent humans. Since his birth, the demonic sword Shiryu has been Guy's protector, the only one able to reach his heart. However, Shiryu is also a cursed blade, capable of completely consuming Guy if given the chance. After the battle between Guy and Tatsumi, Guy, terrified by the evil power displayed by Shiryu, regressed to a childlike state and started to avoid confronting himself. Now with the mind of a child, Guy's condition has everyone deeply worried. To help Guy recover, Sayaka provides ample encouragement and support, taking him out to distract him from his fears. However, after praying at a temple, disaster struck when Tatsumi, transformed into a Busoma, suddenly appeared, overwhelming them both. Although Guy instinctively used Shiryu to block Tatsumi's attack, his childlike mind lacked any fighting ability. In a bid for more fresh blood, Tatsumi turned towards Sayaka. At that critical moment, a ring of light instantly severed Tatsumi's arm. Seya, having just awakened, had arrived just in time. Now, wielding the legendary weapon Chakram, he is set to complete the organization's task of capturing the Busoma. During their confrontation, Seya realized that Tatsumi had been completely consumed by the demonic sword, and the organization could no longer revert him back to human. At this point, the only action Seya could take was to finish him off. Raising his left hand, a golden energy formed a ring, and a golden symbol appeared above his head. Simultaneously, Shiryu, merged with Guy, also resonated, clearly struggling with its own murderous urges. After completing his task, Seya intended to leave immediately. However, as he turned to go, he sensed the evil power emanating from Guy. Knowing he could not ignore it, Seya once again displayed the golden symbol, indicating that a battle against the demonic sword Shiryu was imminent. Meanwhile, the truth about Shiryu was gradually coming to light. Typically, swordsmiths forge two blades and select the better one. This suggests that there could be two Shiryus in existence. Indeed, the Shiryu with Guy, which bears no name on its blade, is actually a shadow sword, not the real Shiryu. The whereabouts of the genuine Shiryu are unknown even to Guy's foster father, Amon. Coincidentally, Kiyomi, the sword sharpener who had returned the Tanbakiri to Amon, had just received a commission to polish a weapon. This weapon was the real demonic sword Shiryu. As she polished it, a piercing shriek sounded, and an eye appeared on the blade. Instantly, Kiyomi was controlled by a dark energy, losing her self-awareness and beginning to swing the sword, intending to kill her colleagues. Fortunately, she regained consciousness just in time and urgently signaled her colleagues to leave the room and to not return. During the continued sharpening, a voice craving blood echoed in Kiyomi's mind. Eventually, she had to feed blood to the real Shiryu to silence the malevolent voice. Soon, the client who commissioned the polishing arrived, eager to meet the master who polished Shiryu. However, unbeknownst to him, Kiyomi was in no state to meet anyone. After the client gave a sinister smile, he left the place. Meanwhile, Miora, wielding Joltgavin, faced another challenge from the holder of Flamberge. As their fierce battle raged, two mysterious figures appeared nearby. One of them, named Grims, is known as the strongest Busoma in history, called the Grim Reaper since the dawn of humanity. Soon, an unprecedented terror will quickly befall mankind. When humans experience immense pressure or fear, they instinctively shut down their emotions for self-protection, sometimes even regressing to a childlike state to avoid facing themselves. Guy is a current example of this. However, since he has merged with the demonic sword Shiryu, his strong evil aura was detected by Seya, the bearer of the sword. As a Shoshidi sword dolls, Seya knew he couldn't ignore Guy. He knocked Guy down with a single punch. Seeing Guy emotionally shut down, Seya admonished him that escaping from oneself is pointless and facing challenges is the only truth. At the same time, a monk appeared and took Seya to his shrine to inquire about the Shoshidi organization's plans for Guy. Seya was candid in his response. If Guy could control himself, Seya would take him back to Shoshidi. However, if he turned into a Busoma, Seya would execute him immediately. Though Sayaka was displeased with Seya's unilateral approach, the monk was not surprised. Given his age, he was accustomed to dealing with various people, not only from Shoshidi, but also from another organization called Gabi, with whom the monk often interacted. A Gabi member, who had been tracking a Busoma since the previous day, was temporarily staying in this area. In his view, Shoshidi's approach of fighting demons with demons is heretical. He believed that defeating Busoma with human efforts is the righteous way, clearly opposing Seiya's stance. At this moment, a fight seemed to be the only way to determine the truth. At the start of the battle, the man discarded his wooden stick and clenched his right hand into a fist, using a Gabi boxing technique that erases the self and infuses divine power into a fist of justice. He removed his shirt, revealing a powerful aura, and quickly charged at Seya, leaping to deliver a fierce punch. Feeling his opponent's strength, Seya decided to use the legendary weapon Chakram to swiftly end the fight. However, a dark shadow suddenly appeared at that moment. Seeing this, Guy threw a stone at it. The man then turned and walked towards Guy, intending to teach the troublemaker a lesson. The man had been tracking a Busoma that was hiding in his shadow all along, waiting for the right moment to strike him down. Suddenly, the Busoma launched countless kunai at Guy. This prompted the complete awakening of Shiryu within Guy. Transformed, Guy then pierced the Busoma's skull and instantly split it in two. However, the battle was not over yet. The Busoma, still emanating a strong, murderous aura, fired more kunai, jumped into the sky to conceal itself, and managed to escape. Now, Seya was curious to see if Guy would turn into a Busoma. It was a critical situation for Guy, fused with Shiryu and facing Shoshidi. Fortunately, amidst Sayaka's continuous calls, Guy slowly regained his self-awareness and took back control of his body. Despite this, Seya was still unwilling to let Guy go. At this crucial moment, the monk intervened, using various distasteful methods to successfully restrain Seya, buying time for Sayaka to take Guy away. After Guy and the others had left, as compensation, the monk agreed to share some information with Seya about Guy's background and the origins of the demonic sword Shiryu. Soon, the secrets of the two Shiryu swords are set to be revealed. Childhood trauma can have profound effects on a child. The boy in question witnessed his mother's suicide by hanging right after he was born. Even after more than a decade, his heart remains trapped in that dark womb. To break down his defenses, his foster father Amon gave him the demonic sword Shiryu. Guy, in his own words, has no happy memories and often ran away from home as a child. However, he always realized that he had nowhere to go and returned to his foster father's house. What he tried to escape was the relentless darkness. No matter how far Guy ran, he felt the darkness chasing him. He tried desperately to find a different world, but ultimately realized it was futile because there is only one world, a dark world that constantly follows him, waiting to kill him. Guy couldn't escape, no matter how hard he tried. Thus, Guy changed his mind. He decided to destroy this current world with a sword of his own making, to slay both the world and its darkness. In Guy's view, this world has no sunlight. What others call sunlight is just a different reality they live in. Everyone sees something different. So, when his foster father fused Shiryu with Guy, what exactly is this Shiryu? The weapon in question was not forged by humans, but was the creation of a dragon during the Muromachi period, in a shrine far from the capital where people worshipped dragon horns. One servant, driven by madness, and his wife aimed to seize a dragon horn for themselves. During their journey, they opened Pandora's box, releasing a blinding golden light and a massive golden dragon that entered the woman's body. On a stormy night, she gave birth to a child with dragon horns and scales. Fearful, the couple abandoned the child, who was soon saved and taken as an apprentice by a blacksmith. As they spent time together, the blacksmith's daughter fell in love with the boy with dragon horns. On his deathbed, the blacksmith entrusted his daughter to the boy. The dragon blacksmith continued the business and later had a child with his wife, who bore no dragon traits. The dragon blacksmith's fame grew, and a general, having heard of him, sent orders for him to forge a peerless weapon. The forging went smoothly until it was time to deliver the weapon. The general insisted the dragon blacksmith present the weapon in person. Despite his refusal, he had to obey the order. Predictably, when the dragon blacksmith met the general, he was immediately ordered to remove his hood. His dragon-like appearance shocked everyone. Thinking a monster had entered his domain, the general ordered the execution of him and his family. After his wife and child were executed, it was discovered that swords could not harm the dragon blacksmith. Eventually, people gave up and threw him into the distant sea. However, he survived and swam ashore. The dragon blacksmith wondered if his very existence was against divine will. Thinking of his lost family, he made a horrifying decision: to burn the world to ashes. He forged 2 demonic swords named Shiryu. He ended his own life with the shadow sword, while the true sword beheaded the general. Afterwards, both Shiryus disappeared, but they are rumored to appear whenever a powerful figure is assassinated. This terrifying tale is why Shiryu harbors such deadly intent. Now knowing the full truth, Seya deeply acknowledges Guy and decides to wait for his return at home. The next morning, Guy returns home with Sayaka. Since Guy himself wished to enter a different world, Seya invites him to join Shoshidi, believing it to be the best choice for Guy. Meanwhile, a white-haired noble youth is about to leave his house, and he is the true bearer of Shiryu. The man frozen for 16 years finally awoke. After completing the organization's task to eliminate Busoma, he first took Guy to his old home. Many years had passed, and his beloved, who had waited for him, no longer looked the same. In her mind, he had never left, indicating her mental state was impaired. When she went to the kitchen, Seya took the opportunity to take Guy outside and explained why he had originally left home. As sword dolls possessed by legendary weapons, they would inevitably turn into Busoma one day. To delay this transformation, their organization would cryogenically freeze them, putting them to sleep in ice until their power was needed again. To avoid becoming a Busoma and harming his beloved, Seya had chosen to leave. During cryo sleep, he did not age, and time stopped for him, but not for his beloved. She had silently supported his decision without asking about Shoshidi, trusting him when most would have abandoned such a monster. However, she had always waited for him. To make amends, Seya decided to send Guy away temporarily to spend some time alone with his beloved. While Guy was strolling outside, a performance involving sword spirits caught his attention. It was a competitive display of a sword spirit game. During the event, a blue-haired girl named Midoriko appeared on the screen. As a top competitor in fighting games, no one had yet defeated Midoriko in the game. However, this made her life feel boring and meaningless. During a restroom break, the man she had just competed against approached her. The bespectacled man expressed his gratitude to Midoriko because a year ago, he almost committed suicide. His colleagues had blamed him for work-related problems, forcing him to resign. But one day, he saw Midoriko's match on TV, which sparked his interest and gave him hope that the world wasn't so bad. Inspired, he found a new job and credited Midoriko for his turnaround. Unfortunately, Midoriko was indifferent to the fan's confession and even scolded him for his one-sided feelings. In the evening, on her way home, Midoriko encountered the bespectacled man again. Frustrated by his persistence, Midoriko, already disillusioned with life, violently attacked him, changing from her innocent girl image. This real act of aggression excited her more than playing games. However, the bespectacled man could not endure it forever and started to fight back, hitting Midoriko repeatedly without any intention to stop, even if it meant leaving her bruised and swollen. Just then, the participant who had previously battled with Miora, the holder of Flamberge, appeared. Flames engulfed the human body as Flamberge flew to Midoriko's side and guided her to pick it up and fight. With Flamberge, Midoriko could become a being beyond human. Innocent bystanders were slaughtered by Midoriko, controlled by Flamberge. She focused solely on destroying everything because such a life was not boring. Fortunately, Guy arrived in time and transformed instantly, drawing on the power of the demonic sword Shiryu to battle Midoriko. Meanwhile, the Shoshidi headquarters noticed them and immediately ordered Seya to reinforce. Midoriko, realizing she could not win, fled the scene. Do not casually approach young girls outside, because you never know if beneath their cute appearance lies a crazy nature. At this moment, two foolish guys stopped Midoriko, asking her to serve them. Unexpectedly, Midoriko lifted her own shirt and killed one man with a single strike. The man who ran away started screaming for help, but Midoriko unleashed flames again and turned him into ashes. Next, two innocent bystanders were at risk, but fortunately, Guy appeared in time to block the attack. Suddenly, a white-haired boy shouted the name Shiryu, surprising Guy. As Guy asked who he was, Midoriko attacked Guy with a knife but fled after a few exchanges. A man wielding a demonic sword walked out of roaring flames. This man was the former Shoshidi commander, Miora, who destroyed several tanks with just one strike of his sword, Jolt Gawin. Seeing that human forces could not defeat Miora, a helicopter deployed a specialized mechanical unit. Miora slashed once more, but this time his attack was easily blocked. The mechanical units then pulled out their blades and engaged in fierce combat with Miora, but they were swiftly defeated within seconds. With the situation critical, the responsibility to eliminate Miora naturally fell upon another demonic sword bearer. When Guy and another arrived at the battlefield, The human troops had already been slaughtered by Miora, who remained unharmed and had not yet used the power of Boma. After some shouting between the two sides, a golden symbol appeared on Seiya's forehead, and he drew out his divine weapon, Chakram. Instantly, both unleashed immense pressure, setting the stage for a showdown between Boma and Sword Dolls. Before the fight officially started, Seya signaled Guy to step back and reminded him of their recent agreement. On their way to the battlefield, Seya sensed that he would soon be consumed by Chakram and turn into a bloodthirsty Boma. He made Guy promise to kill him if he lost his sanity, and transformed. As the battle commenced, Miora launched a sword attack at Guy, who quickly blocked it with his demonic sword. Seizing the moment, Seya threw several light rings at Miora, but Miora effortlessly neutralized them. Miora launched a fierce attack on Seya. As a veteran wielder of the demonic sword for over a decade, Miora had mastered his weapon, Jolt Gawin, to its fullest potential. Seya was on the defensive, taking hits. However, he capitalized on Miora's brief imbalance during an attack. Using his numerical advantage in light rings, Seya eventually managed to restrain Miora. Just as Seya delivered a potentially fatal blow, the power within his demonic sword became uncontrollable. Miora broke free from the Chakram's restraint and inflicted severe damage on Seya. To end the battle quickly, Miora transformed into a Boma, planning to finish Seya for good. Fortunately, Guy intervened. Facing Miora's formidable power, a 2-on-1 approach was now the sensible choice. Seizing the fleeting opportunity, Seya launched numerous light rings at Miora, allowing Guy to follow up with significant damage. Their battle reignited, with Seya and Guy attacking from both sides. Suddenly, a mysterious figure appeared on the battlefield, known as the strongest Boma ever, called the Grim Reaper since the dawn of humanity. His power far surpassed all previous Bomas. With Grim Reaper Grimm's arrival, Seya knew they stood no chance. Already injured in battle and unable to escape, they were forced to fight Grimms. The power disparity was stark, and Seya and Guy had no chance of winning, especially as Guy's condition became increasingly unstable. He was being slowly consumed by Shiryu and was on the brink of becoming a Boma. As expected, after several rounds of attacks by Grimms, a strong desire to kill took over Guy. Even as Seya attempted to seal the Shiryu within Guy, it was in vain. Guy was fully consumed by the demonic sword Shiryu, transforming into a bloodthirsty Boma. In a critical moment, Seya intercepted Guy's attack with his own body. His moment of rampage was imminent. At this point, Seya's soul fell into darkness, completely consumed by the Chakram and becoming a Boma. Since the dawn of humanity, weapons have continually suffered as tools of labor. But now, this era of enslavement is finally coming to an end. Over the centuries, weapons, steeped in human blood, have gained their own life. By exploiting human sorrow and despair, these weapons have inhabited bodies with intense desires to kill, transforming into Bomas. Led by Grimms, these Bomas are now poised to declare the extinction of humanity. In the recent major battle between Sword Dolls and Bomas, Seya, completely consumed by Chakram, and Grim Reaper Grimms have both vanished. Guy, severely injured, was taken back to Shosid for a thorough examination. His physical condition was not critical, but his blood parameters exceeded safe limits, making him prone to uncontrollable transformation into a Boma. Therefore, Guy, at a critical point, needed to be put into cryogenic sleep immediately. Guy struggled with this decision, as he had not yet fulfilled his promise to Seya. However, under his current dependence and the administration of sedative gas, he reluctantly conceded. Following a commander's order, Guy was forcibly placed into cryogenic sleep. However, events often unfold unexpectedly. Controlled by Chakram, Seya, now a Boma, launched an unprecedented attack on human cities. The commander intended to dispatch Sword Dolls to the battlefield, but the Shosid authorities refused and even terminated Guy's cryogenic sleep. They saw no point in sending more Sword Dolls since Seya had fully transformed into a Boma. They believed that only by allowing Guy to also become a Boma could they perhaps stand a chance, fighting fire with fire. Guy quickly located Seya. To honor their original agreement, he immediately drew the demonic sword Shiryu. However, Seya, now a Boma, had drastically increased in strength and Guy was no match for him. The situation showed Guy being overwhelmingly defeated. As Seya pressed on, Shiryu within Guy stirred, filling his mind with a desire to kill. Remembering Seiya's sacrifices, Guy knew that being consumed by Shiryu would waste Seiya's efforts to seal it. Guy endured the pain and repeatedly blocked Seiya's fierce attacks. Left with no choice, Guy fell into darkness and transformed into a Boma. Now, the battle between the two Bomas began. Seizing a moment when Seya was off guard, Guy thrust his sword through him. Now Guy has fulfilled the promise he made with Seya, finally letting his troubled soul find peace. After regaining his consciousness, Guy returned home and embraced Sayaka. Days later, Guy's body had fully recovered, but the call of Shiryu inside him remained, causing him immense pain. Guy then isolated himself again, despite Sayaka's constant encouragement. He could not escape the dark fear that he might one day transform into a Boma and brutally kill his loved ones. One night, Guy made a difficult decision. The next morning, he visited his mother's grave and confessed to her. He now understood why his mother had chosen to end her life years ago, to protect the ones she cared about. Guy then devoted all his effort to sword making and gifted the finished weapon to Sayaka, hoping it would protect her. Guy spent some memorable, happy days with his foster father and Sayaka. With his preparations complete, it was time for him to act on his decision. Guy went to a rooftop, took out a dagger, and separated the Shiryu forged prosthetic from his body. He then walked to the edge of the roof. To prevent himself from becoming a Boma and to avoid harming his loved ones, Guy jumped from the roof, choosing to end his life. A woman hanged herself in the forest, dying tragically. Years later, her child, understanding the depth of her sacrifice, followed the same path. This scene was witnessed by Sayaka, who fainted from shock. Fortunately, a man named Kazumo appeared and saved the suicidal young man. After several days, the young man, Guy, fully recovered. Today, his savior wanted to give him a gift, a wooden prosthetic. However, Guy did not even thank Kazumo and instead blamed him for saving his life. Himiko, a woman standing nearby, advised Kazumo not to argue needlessly. She told the ungrateful Guy that their group, Gabi, had been secretly fighting Boma. Guy was the first to become a Boma and still managed to sever his weapon, proving his uniqueness. Even though Guy removed the Shiryu prosthetic, Himiko could still see the demon inside him. Although unsure of Guy's thoughts, she hoped he would not seek death again. Destroying his body wouldn't redeem his soul. To fulfill his wishes, Guy must live as if he were already dead, which would completely eradicate the demon inside him. This concept of living as if dead is the essence of the Gabi organization and their practice, Hollow Kenpo. Today's martial arts event would gradually reveal what Gabi pursues. From the ongoing duel, it's evident that their goal is to fight to a draw, attacking and defending equally. This is the essence of Hollow Kenpo. It's not about real draws, but about observing the opponent's movements and synchronizing with them, reaching a state of nothingness. Himiko is the second person in the organization's 300-year history to master this essence. When Himiko was 9, her father, the previous leader, believed she had realized the true essence and gave her the jewel representing the clan's leadership. Since then, Himiko reached the state of nothingness and became what people call a living Buddha. Now, her body is extraordinary, containing 21 cursed weapons, including demon swords, all taken from defeated Boma. Normally, Himiko would have turned into sword dolls or Boma, or the weapons would have killed her. However, they had no effect on her because she is the sheath for all weapons. To become a sheath, one must reach a state of emptiness, like the inside of a sheath. To help Guy, Himiko will train him in a special practice not involving Hollow Kenpo, but teaching him to confront his inner demons. This place, called the Realm of Karmic Fire, tests Guy's fate. If Guy can walk out of a circle of candles, his training is complete. However, this simple task is currently impossible for him. The closer he gets to the flames, the more they react to his deep karmic obstacles, burning fiercer. Thankfully, Himiko intervenes, piercing her hand through Guy's body to remove his chi, calming him. Then she absorbs Guy's chi into her own body, attempting to purify the evil essence. Shortly after, Kazuma warns Himiko that the evil fire was too strong and keeping Guy and Gabi could soon bring disaster. He pleads with her to eliminate Guy now. However, Himiko immediately refuses, as the purpose of Gabi is to defeat Boma and save humanity. People like Guy, who carry heavy burdens, are exactly those they should save. This place is not only for training, but also a sacred temple for saving humanity. The next day, Himiko and Guy had a heartfelt conversation, through which Himiko learned why Guy had chosen to attempt suicide. Guy's suicide was not an escape. Instead, from his birth, he was fatefully linked with Shiryu. His intention was to sever this bond through death, preventing more innocent lives from being lost because of him. Knowing this truth, Himiko began to truly accept Guy, and a subtle affection started to grow between them, a scene accidentally witnessed by her subordinate Kazumo. Afterward, Kazumo approached Himiko, warning her that her ability to safely harbor a large number of weapons within her body stemmed from being heartless and devoid of love or hatred. The former leader had said that love is a very dangerous emotion and should not replace a heartless state. However, Himiko disregarded Kazumo's well-meaning caution, firmly believing she would not develop romantic feelings for Guy. Meanwhile, a Boma duel arranged by the Grim Reaper Grimms was intensively ongoing. Grimms predicted the imminent extinction of humanity, envisioning the world as an arena for Boma to compete. However, a catalyst was still missing: the arrival of the God of Arms, essential for humanity's demise. The location of this entity remained unknown to the Boma. Following the guidance of the Phoenix, an oppressed Boma arrived at Gabi. Fortunately, Guy intervened just in time to prevent Kazumo from killing it. The Boma regained its sanity, transforming back into human form, and Lady Himiko took this opportunity to dispel the Phoenix. The old man with glasses drew a long sword and stabbed it into a man, allowing the sword to absorb human blood. The next moment, the man's body convulsed uncontrollably, and he broke free from his restraints. Under the control of the demonic sword, the man lost all self-awareness and headed towards his destination. He arrived at a church where a Boma was tormenting an innocent girl, and her brother was powerless to stop it. Fortunately, fate intervened. Influenced by the demonic sword Shiryu, a white-haired young man felt its call and eventually accepted Shiryu's proposal to possess him. Thus, a sword doll capable of wielding the demonic sword's power was born. Instantly, the young man engaged the Boma in battle. With the powerful force of Shiryu, the Boma was easily defeated. Exhausted, the young man collapsed, but the expression on his sister's face suggested that the situation was complex. Much later, at the headquarters of Shosid, the young man Shin had awakened. However, the voice of the demonic sword Shiryu, urging him to kill, tormented him continuously. This caused Shin great anguish. The old man with glasses, who was also Shin's biological father, appeared at the scene. The commander explained to Shin that once a weapon consumes a significant amount of human blood, it gains its own life. These living weapons then possess humans, eventually turning them into a Boma. The Shosid organization has been battling Boma for ages, and Shin's father has contributed significantly to their efforts with substantial donations. Years ago, Shin's family went on a happy trip. Unexpectedly, they were ambushed on the road. In a brutal attack by Grimms, Shin's mother was cruelly killed, leaving a lasting trauma on the survivors. This tragedy is why Shin's father has been continuously supporting Shosid. Shin has now been possessed by the demonic sword Shiryu and will soon lose his self-awareness, transforming into a murderous Boma. To save his son, his father decided to use an untested technology to attempt removing Shiryu from Shin's body. In his father's eyes, his son would inevitably become a Boma, which was no different from being dead. If there was a chance to restore Shin to his former self, his father was willing to gamble on this experimental technology. Essentially, he was using his son as a test subject. Fortunately, the experiment to remove the demonic sword from Shin was successful, and he seemed to have returned to his previous state. However, during further checks, images of killing reappeared in Shin's mind. Theoretically, the demonic sword should have been removed. After the checkup, as Shin walked out of the room, he felt the call of another demonic sword and involuntarily walked into the armory. The sword calling Shin was the Shiryu prosthetic previously removed by Guy. Controlled by it, Shin fled with this legendary weapon. Considering that the Shiryu Shin took was the shadow sword originally held by Guy, and the one just removed was the true sword of Shiryu, could there be a subtle connection between these two swords? With the situation becoming critical, the commander ordered Shin's immediate capture. However, Shin's father suddenly stopped everyone because everything that had happened was actually part of a carefully orchestrated plan by him and the senior leaders. Controlled by the shadow sword, Shin quickly arrived at Gabi and tried to return it to its original owner, Guy. Shin then told Guy everything that had happened before he lost consciousness, without holding anything back, realizing he and Shiryu were fatefully linked and unable to sever this bond no matter what happened. Guy felt utterly helpless. Thus, he threw Shiryu into the river, vowing to sever all ties with it. However, ideals are beautiful, reality is cruel. Upon their return to Gabi, they found the ground littered with human corpses, the work of a man controlled by a demonic sword. The man attacked Guy and his group. In panic, Guy told Shin to flee down the mountain quickly, while his wooden prosthetic was instantly destroyed. The man then transformed into a Boma, and Kuromaru transformed to protect Guy. However, the enemy's strength was overwhelming, and he easily defeated Kuromaru, forcing him back to human form. At the critical moment, Gabi members arrived in time to surround the Boma, and under Kazumo's command, they attempted to cast a barrier spell. Despite their efforts, human techniques proved futile against the Bosoma's fierce assault. Considering the situation, with everyone at risk of being slaughtered by the Bosoma, Guy reluctantly sought Shiryu's help. By then, Guy was completely consumed by Shiryu. Although this granted him incredible strength, he ultimately lost his self-awareness and became a killing machine that only understood slaughter. In an instant, Guy defeated Kazumo and then disappeared along with the fleeing Bosoma. The belated leader, Himiko, arrived at the scene, bewildered by the events. What could she do now? With just a look, the young man was paralyzed. Then, Guy burst out with an evil aura, which left Kuromaru confused. Following this, a truck driver, who had seen Guy from behind and was controlled by Shiryu, drove up. With Kuromaru in reluctant pursuit, they headed towards the bustling city center. When they reached the crowded streets, the now unconscious driver immediately grabbed an iron bar and started attacking the people around him. Others fled in panic, but before they could get far, they too were controlled and turned into mindless, killing zombies. Under the influence of this evil power, the deep malice within humanity was unleashed, plunging the entire city into terrifying chaos. At the same time, another city was attacked by Joltgawin. Shoshidi decided to send sword dolls to fight back. 3 sword bearers were awakened from cryogenic sleep to confront the Bosoma. Unfortunately, despite being sword bearers, they were significantly weaker than the fully empowered Bosoma. Even though they used all their skills and unleashed powerful sword moves, they were no match for Joltgawin. Fortunately, at that moment, Commander Kiyoka of Shoshidi fired a special bullet at the enemy. Once the drug was injected, the Bosoma immediately lost its fighting strength. This was a special weapon designed specifically for Bosoma. It could separate the demonic sword from the person it inhabited. Miora, manipulated by Joltgawin, finally regained his senses and recognized the woman in front of him, who was his biological daughter. It was their first reunion in 16 years. Kiyoka clung to her father, but their happy moment was brief. Human soldiers arrived and ordered Kiyoka to quickly move away from Miora. Fortunately, she explained that she had used a special drug to restore her father's consciousness, which made the soldiers lower their weapons. On their way back to the Shoshidi organization, Kiyoka had much to tell her father, but events took a sudden turn. The soldiers received instructions from the organization's higher-ups, so they stopped in a deserted area. Although Miora was no longer under Joltgawin's control, the Shoshidi leadership still saw him as a former traitor to the organization. To the authorities, Miora, who knew many Shoshidi secrets, could not be allowed to live. With no choice left, Kiyoka and Miora had to resist. Fortunately, as a commander, Kiyoka had no trouble dealing with a few soldiers. However, Miora, because of the shackles, couldn't dodge the soldiers' gunfire. Just as Kiyoka was checking his injuries, he suddenly signaled for her to quickly move away. The so-called drug for combating Boma only had a temporary effect and couldn't truly separate the demonic sword from its host. Zoltgawin, having regained control, coldly turned away and continued its killing spree. Left behind, Kiyoka never fulfilled her dream of reuniting with her father. Meanwhile, the Grim Reaper, Grims, reveled in watching humanity edge towards destruction amid screams of terror and despair. Grims acknowledged Guy, controlled by the demonic sword Shiryu, as the legendary armored god. But is this truly the case? Grims believed that an unprecedented terror for humanity was about to arrive. No one could stop the advance of the armored god. The weak and helpless humans were inevitably unable to resist their fated destruction. As a boy, he witnessed a horrifying scene where his future stepmother brutally killed his biological mother to rise in status. Even though the boy told his father what he saw, everyone dismissed it as a child's nonsense. Nobody took his words seriously. Taking advantage of the father's grief, the woman quickly became his stepmother. This planted a seed of hatred deep in the boy's heart. The girl with short hair nearby empathized deeply as she too grew up in a hate-filled family. Another girl also carried indelible childhood trauma. The reason these three children were together was that they were subjects of Shosid research. They were injected with essence drawn from life-bearing weapons, transforming them beyond human. The bracelets they wore could affect human astrocytes. The children remained rational normally, but removing the bracelets turned them into instinct-driven killing monsters. Yet, they were not fully Boma. Shosid continued to support the man to further his research. The children became subjects mainly due to their tragic pasts. Their survival was not based on love, but on deep-rooted hatred, a necessary condition for the experiments. Hatred served as a bridge between humans and Boma. To keep the children from forgetting their hatred during long hospital stays, the man would often reopen their emotional wounds. After he left the control room, a girl appeared. She was a Boma controlled by a demonic sword. Midoro then killed a nurse, donned her uniform, and lured away a child named Rie. Soon, the news that Rie, his sister, had been kidnapped reached her brother. Knowing the captor was a Boma, a monster beyond his ability to handle, Shin asked Kuramaru to help him find Guy, who alone possessed the power to match a Boma. When they finally located Guy and saw he was alive, Sayaka rushed to embrace him. Shin explained the situation, and since he had previously returned the sword Shiryu to Guy readily agreed to help. Meanwhile, Rie woke up from her unconscious state, revealing that Midoro had captured her with a specific purpose: to use her as bait to awaken her still dormant brother. Just then, an unexpected event occurred. Rie's bracelet disintegrated, causing her to lose sanity and turn into a monster driven by a killing instinct. A fierce battle erupted between the two. As the fight reached a deadlock, Shin and the others arrived just in time. The now irrational Rie broke a window and escaped. Seeing the wielder of a demonic sword, the demonic sword Shiryu within Guy stirred, transforming him. In disbelief at the unfolding events, Sayaka rushed in front of Guy, hoping to restore his sanity, but was fatally stabbed and fell into a pool of blood. At the same time, Midoro transformed into a Boma and engaged in a fierce battle with Guy. Watching Sayaka nearly dead, Shin was overwhelmed with grief. The voice of Shiryu within him, urging him to kill, echoed in his mind, and Shin also fell under the sword's control. Taking advantage of the battle between Guy and Midoro, Shin sneakily attacked from behind, ending Midoro's life with a single strike. Now, with Guy wielding the lesser Shiryu and Shin the greater Shiryu, their fated showdown was set to begin. However, Guy reverted to human form, as he had other, more pressing missions at the moment. He quickly left the scene, but soon, the duel between light and dark, to determine who the true armored god is, will be unveiled. The girl's body had undergone special modifications, giving her the ability to heal wounds rapidly. However, this was not necessarily a good thing, because if the bracelet she wore was removed, she would immediately lose her sanity and transform into a bloodthirsty, murderous monster. On this day, Rie's mental state was particularly bleak, leading to her bracelet shattering. Although she urged her companions to flee quickly, it was too late. In an instant, a boy was bitten and his neck snapped by Rie. Another girl lost her sanity as her bracelet also disintegrated. But before she could fully transform into a monster, she was viciously killed by Ri. The doctor behind the scenes was shocked and quickly grabbed a weapon from a drawer, but ordinary firearms were ineffective against Ri. Ultimately, the doctor met his own demise. Watching the doctor die, Ri slowly began to recall the events that had just unfolded, filling her with immense grief. Shin, arriving too late and seeing two children lying in pools of blood, mistakenly thought it was the work of a Boma. In a rush to find his sister Ri, Shin followed the blood trail out of the hospital. Guy, drawn by the scent of blood and carnage, also found Ri transformed into a monster. Ri tried to resist but was knocked down by Guy. At that moment, Ri regained consciousness and reverted to her human form. Just as Guy was about to investigate Ri, Shin arrived in time to stop him. Remembering Sayaka, who had been fatally struck by Guy, and seeing his sister Ri now fallen, Shin drew the demonic sword Shiryu to challenge Guy. However, although Shin was possessed by the demonic sword, his powers had not yet awakened, and he was no match for Guy, a fact he was painfully aware of. Meanwhile, Ri regained consciousness, and not wanting to lose her sanity and harm her loved ones again, ran towards the forest. Shin then abandoned the idea of fighting Guy and immediately followed her. However, Ri intentionally avoided her brother, making it not so easy to find her. Moreover, Shin was in a dangerous position, as before long, he would face the tragic fate of killing his own sister. Yet this very situation would ultimately awaken the full power of the demonic sword Shiryu within him. The sister was transformed into a murderous monster, unbeknownst to her brother. At the same time, a Boma appeared in the city, seeking revenge on the world for losing its only friend. When Shin, wielding the demonic sword Shiryu, arrived, the Boma Kuromaru recognized him and reverted to human form. To gain the young man's allegiance, Shin launched a verbal assault, offering genuine friendship. He continued to manipulate Kuromaru, telling him that to save Guy, he must defeat him quickly, as Guy was under the control of a monster. The only way to help Guy was to defeat the demon possessing him. However, Shin's motives were purely personal. He had no real intention of saving Guy, but Kuromaru was unaware and fell for Shin's deception. Meanwhile, at the Shosid command center, the top brass noticed something off about Shin's father, Matoba. He had secretly tampered with a Shosid-developed drug intended to counter Boma. Initially, the drug seemed to reduce the demonic nature in Boma, making them appear human in metrics. However, the demonic nature would significantly increase afterward, maintaining a high level, effectively acting as a catalyst for Boma. Matoba believed Boma represented the future of humanity, which, reliant on weapons for survival and progress, would eventually merge with these weapons, a logical evolution leading to the birth of Boma. Having served humanity for years, Matoba concluded that humanity was afflicted with an incurable disease, dominated by useless emotions such as confusion, pain, sorrow, and fear. Becoming a Boma, he argued, would liberate humanity completely. His radical views were naturally unacceptable to the leadership. Regrettably, not only were they powerless against Matoba, but they were also assassinated by killers he had dispatched. Elsewhere, Guy, now a Boma, engaged in battle with another Boma. Despite the enemy's full efforts, they were no match for Guy's new form. Himiko, the leader of Gabi, arriving in time, sensed danger. She first seized the dual gun Boma's weapons and absorbed them into herself. However, the immense power of the dual guns overwhelmed the human Himiko, leaving her unable to continue fighting. Meanwhile, Shin attempted a sneak attack but was easily blocked by Guy. Shin then signaled Kuromaru to act quickly and stop Guy's misdeeds. Yet Kuromaru hesitated, unable to bring himself to harm a friend. Seeing this, Shin grew immensely frustrated, feeling betrayed by Kuromaru. He charged at Guy again, but was intercepted by Sayaka. Recalling how she, under the control of the demonic sword Shiryu, had severed Guy's arm, Sayaka felt deep remorse towards Guy. This scene drove Shin into madness. Despite previously being attacked by Guy, and despite having given his own blood to save Sayaka's life, he couldn't fathom why everyone was abandoning him. On the brink of collapse, Shin was enveloped by negative emotions. Guy prepared to finish Shin, but just then Shin's sister appeared, engaging Guy in fierce combat. thereby averting Shin's immediate crisis. Unexpectedly, Shin did not recognize his beloved sister in the heat of battle and mistakenly thought the monster had abducted her. During their fight, Shin fatally stabbed his sister with his sword. As Ri reverted to her human form, Shin realized the horrific mistake he had made, but it was too late. Betrayed by a friend, betrayed by a lover, and witnessing his sister's tragic death, Shin completely broke down. At that moment, the power of the demonic sword within him awakened, setting the stage for a fateful showdown with Guy, ready to erupt at any moment. During a break in the fight between Guy and Shin, Kuromaru took Rie away from the battlefield. Meanwhile, Sayaka used a protective dagger given to her by Guy to stab him in the back, believing it was the only way to bring him back to consciousness. At the same time, Joltgawin Miora arrived and helped the injured Guy escape. Then, Grims appeared suddenly and signaled Miora to retreat quickly, explaining that the powers of the two Shiryu swords needed to align for the armed god to be born. They needed to wait for the right moment. Subsequently, Sayaka was taken away by Himiko, who treated her injuries. The next day, Miura visited the monk's shrine, intending to wreak havoc, but ended up having his arm severed by a sword named Mikazuki, forged from divine steel. Since demonic swords exist in the world, there must also be divine powers to counteract them. Weapons like Mikazuki are simple and pure, untainted and imbued only with human emotions. Naturally, Miura's desire to kill was no match for Mikazuki's purity. Although Miura lost the duel, he absorbed Mikazuki into his body and went to meet Grims. Confused, Miura wanted to know what Grims meant by the armed god. Grims, however, was reluctant to say more, and, sensing Miura's wavering intent to kill, ended his life with a single stroke. Meanwhile, Shin went to the Shoshidi headquarters, where the reasons behind his father's actions were about to be revealed. It turned out that Grims had killed Shin's mother, instilling both fear and hatred of Boma in Shin's father. To understand what Boma were, he began to associate with the Shoshidi organization. However, he soon realized that the more he learned about Boma, the more he could not deny his feelings. He began to admire the Boma for their pure violence and strong presence. Believing the best love he could offer his children was to evolve them into Boma, he saw potential in Shin and his sister Rie. Their mother's tragic death had already seeded hatred in them. Although the experiment to artificially turn Rie into a Boma failed, it still helped by driving Shin into deeper despair and shattering his human hopes, leading him to become a Boma and freeing him from the weaknesses of the human spirit. Now, nothing could sadden Shin, not even his father's death. On the other hand, Guy, who had returned to human form, experienced a starkly different path. He sought out Himiko, asking her to kill him immediately, but Himiko refused. After this, Guy and Sayaka talked until Shin confronted them, stabbing Guy and forcibly taking Sayaka away. When Guy woke up, despite Himiko's efforts to stop him, he was determined to rescue Sayaka. Reluctantly, Himiko treated his wounds. After Guy left, Himiko found herself crying uncontrollably, as the demonic swords inside her were unsealed. The many swords she could carry were due to her ruthlessness and detachment, but her newfound feelings for Guy meant she no longer had the power to keep the sword sealed. Finally, Kazumo held Himiko tightly as they faced death together. After a long wait, the showdown between Shin and Guy finally erupted, a battle between light and shadow to determine the true armed god. As they fought fiercely, Grims, who had been watching, grew extremely annoyed because neither Shin nor Guy had transformed into weapons, which was necessary for the armed god to be born. Seeing their lingering human emotions, Grims intervened, attempting to kill Sayaka in their presence. This action forced Guy and Shin to join forces against Grims. However, Grims's power was formidable, and they couldn't defeat him without becoming Boma. In a critical moment, Rie, who had miraculously survived previous ordeals, and Kuromaru came to their aid. To stop Grims from killing their loved ones, Shin and Guy transformed into Boma and dealt him a fatal blow. Grims was willing to sacrifice his life for the birth of the armed god, but he overlooked one crucial point. Whether Shin or Guy won, the merging of the two Shiryu swords would still summon the armed god, leading humanity towards destruction. However, if the victor retained their humanity and possessed the strength not to succumb to the weapon and the will to suppress it, then all of Grimm's plans would be in vain. Guy, who managed to preserve his humanity, was given the hope of continuing life by Shin, allowing him to completely prevent the birth of the armed god. Thus, the anime Sword Guy reached its conclusion.